The final veil is lifted, revealing that the true accumulation of wealth is not an act of gathering, but an act of becoming. As we reach the summit of this philosophy, we observe the life of Henry Ford once more, not as a manufacturer, but as a man who conquered the devil's workshop, the idle, fearful mind. When Ford decided to produce his famous V8 engine, his engineers insisted it was an impossible feat to cast an 8-cylinder engine block in one piece. Ford did not argue, he simply commanded them to stay on the job until they succeeded, no matter how much time was required. For 6 months, they failed. For another 6 months, they failed. But Ford had reached a decision that was backed by a burning desire and enforced by persistence. At the end of the year, the impossible engine became a reality. This story is the ultimate testament to the core message of the entire work: the physical world is merely a shadow cast by the mental world. Ford did not build an engine, he thought an engine into existence by refusing to accept the limitations of those around him. The analysis of this ultimate stage of achievement reveals that the rich in the book's title refers to a state of complete harmony. To grow rich is to possess the power of self-determination. It is the ability to walk through a world of chaos with a mind that is a sanctuary of order. The core message of Napoleon Hill is that thoughts are things, tangible, energetic forces that have the power to organize matter. We are each equipped with a biological laboratory capable of producing any outcome we can vividly imagine and emotionally charge. The tragedy of the human condition is not a lack of opportunity, but a lack of directed will. Most people are like a high-powered radio transmitter that is broadcasting static because they have never learned to tune the dial. Success, therefore, is not a destination you reach, but a frequency you inhabit. This frequency is maintained through the constant vigilance of the mind. The journey from Barnes's ragged clothes to Schwab's multi-million-dollar deals and Ford's industrial empire proves that the secret is a psychological alignment with the laws of nature. You must define what you want. Create a plan. Surround yourself with a mastermind. And then move forward with a persistence that makes even death seem like a minor inconvenience. You must transmute your basic impulses into creative genius and guard your subconscious against the parasites of fear and doubt. When these elements coalesce, the sixth sense awakens. And you no longer struggle against the current of life, you become the current itself. You realize that the gold mine Darby abandoned was not in the ground, but in his own character, a character that needed the forge of failure to eventually become steel. The meaning of this entire narrative is that you are the dictator of your own mind and the captain of your soul. You have been given the master key that opens every door, from the bank vault to the gates of spiritual peace. The think in the title is the labor, the grow rich is the inevitable harvest. There is no such thing as something for nothing. You must pay the price in mental discipline, but the reward is a life where your outer reality matches your inner vision. The distinction between the master and the servant is simply the content of their predominant thoughts. The world does not give you what you want, it reflects back to you who you are. The truth is that every person who has ever lived has had access to this power. But only those who refuse to settle for the crumbs of life ever bother to learn the language of the mind. You are standing at the end of the script, but at the beginning of your own empire. The laws of achievement are as fixed as the stars, and they are waiting for you to apply them. Whether you seek $1 billion or the quiet joy of a life well lived, the process remains the same. Start with a flame. Feed it with faith. Organize it with a plan. And protect it with persistence. The universe is a vast reservoir of untapped potential, waiting for a mind with enough clarity to give it a shape. The core message of Think and Grow Rich is that the mind is the only tool of creation. And when a man masters his internal world, the external world must inevitably surrender. One's only limitation is that which one sets up in one's own mind. The narrative momentum of the seeker's journey now moves into the profound and often overlooked territory of the subconscious mind. The silent, subterranean engine that dictates the speed and direction of a human life. We are overlooking the most important thing. The mind is like a fertile garden. Indifferent to the seeds planted within it, it will grow thorns as readily as it will grow roses. In the world of Think and Grow Rich, the subconscious is the archetypal intermediary, the bridge between the finite, buzzing world of our sensory perceptions and the vast, silent reservoir of infinite intelligence. Most people live as reactive victims, allowing the weeds of fear, poverty, and doubt to take root through the sensory input of a harsh environment. But the sensational secret of the wealthy is the act of deliberate seeding. This is the process of autosuggestion, a psychological ritual where the individual bypasses the critical, skeptical gatekeeper of the conscious mind to plant a definite chief aim directly into the soil of the soul. Imagine the archetype of the alchemist, standing over the bubbling cauldron of his own thoughts. He understands that the subconscious mind does not distinguish between constructive and destructive thought impulses. It works with the material we feed it, using the most available means to translate those thoughts into their physical equivalent. The sensational intensity of this realization is that poverty is not a lack of money, but a state of mind that has been programmed into the subconscious through years of negative autosuggestion. To think and grow rich is to perform a systemic overhaul of this internal programming. The lesson learned is the law of magnetic attraction. Your subconscious mind becomes a magnet that attracts the people, circumstances, and resources that harmonize with the nature of your dominant thoughts. If you saturate your mind with the image of your success, feeling the texture of the money, hearing the sounds of your achievement, and breathing the air of your new reality, the subconscious begins to reorganize your external world with the cold, mechanical precision of a computer executing a program. The flow of the narrative now moves toward the sixth sense, the apex of Hill's philosophy and the archetype of divine intuition. This is the temple of wisdom where the great achievers of history, the Lincolns, the Wright brothers, and the Fords, received their most revolutionary breakthroughs. Hill describes a practice of invisible counselors, a mental theater where he invited the spirits of great men to sit around a table and offer him advice. While he acknowledged this was an imaginary exercise, the results were sensational. The creative imagination began to provide him with insights and ideas that were far beyond his own education or experience. This analyzes the antenna of the soul. Every human brain is both the broadcasting and receiving station for the vibrations of thought. When the mind is stimulated through a burning desire and a mastermind alliance, it vibrates at a higher frequency, allowing it to tune into the ideas floating in the ether. The lesson is that genius is not an inherited trait, but a technique of connectivity. By silencing the noise of the ego and the static of the physical world, the seeker can tap into a universal intelligence that provides the flash of inspiration required to solve any problem or manifest any fortune. However, the path to this temple of wisdom is guarded by a harrowing gauntlet, the 6 ghosts of fear. These are the archetypal threshold guardians that stand between the average person and their greatness. The fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love, the fear of old age, and the fear of death. These fears are the sensational killers of ambition. They operate in the shadows of the mind, whispering stay safe, don't risk it, and what will they think? Hill's narrative demands a surgical strike against these phantoms. He argues that fear is nothing more than a state of mind, and since the mind can be controlled and directed, fear can be eradicated through the discipline of the will. The psychological analysis here is the choice of sovereignty. You cannot have a mind filled with fear and a pocket filled with gold. The two vibrations are mutually exclusive. To grow rich, you must first become a fearless warrior of the internal landscape, slaying the ghosts of your own insecurity before you can conquer the markets of the world. The narrative flow shifts into the visceral reality of organized planning. A desire without a plan is merely a daydream, a ghost with no bones. This is the archetype of the architect. Hill provides a sensational, 6-step formula for transforming the gold of the mind into the gold of the bank. You must fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for it, establish a definite date for its possession, create a definite plan for its achievement, write out a clear statement of these facts, and read this statement aloud twice daily. This is not a magic trick, it is a psychological contract signed in the ink of your own commitment. The analysis of this step reveals the power of specificity. The universe does not respond to vague requests. It responds to orders. By defining your goal with surgical precision, you eliminate the static of indecision and allow your entire being, conscious and subconscious, to move in a single, irresistible direction. As the seeker moves through these stages, they encounter the law of the mastermind once more, but this time at a deeper, more spiritual level. We see the archetype of harmony. Hill tells the story of the United States Steel Corporation, which was born from a single speech given by Charles M. Schwab at a dinner. Schwab's mastermind ability to harmonize the conflicting interests of the great steel magnates led to the creation of the world's first billion-dollar corporation. This was not a triumph of engineering, but a triumph of persuasion and harmony. The sensational lesson is that riches are the result of service. The great fortunes of the world are not stolen, they are traded for the value provided to others. The more people you serve, the more gold you attract. This analyzes the ether of interconnectedness, the understanding that your success is inextricably linked to the success of those around you. To grow rich, you must become a conduit of value. A man or woman who creates more than they consume, leaving the world better than they found it. The narrative momentum builds as we enter the laboratory of the brain. A sensational exploration of the physical organ as a vibratory center. Hill was ahead of his time, suggesting that our thoughts are actual energy waves that can be measured and directed. The archetype here is the engineer of the self. By controlling the emotions we allow to dominate our minds, shifting from the negative emotions of hate, greed, and superstition to the positive emotions of love, hope, and enthusiasm, we change the frequency of our broadcast. This is the science of success. If you want to change your results, you must change your vibration. The psychological lesson is the duty of self-regulation. You are the dispatcher at the control board of your own mind. If you allow the wrong signals to go out, you will receive the wrong life in return. The story of Think and Grow Rich is ultimately the story of a man taking back the controls of his own destiny from the hands of fate and placing them into the hands of purpose. The narrative now reaches its final, most demanding stage, the archetypal awakening of the sovereign adult. For years, the sensational promise of the digital age was that it would provide us with the global village, a place of infinite connection and democratized knowledge. But as we look at the wreckage of the adolescent psyche, we realize we have instead built a digital panopticon where the villagers are both the prisoners and the guards. We are overlooking the most important thing. The anxious generation is not a failure of youth, but a failure of leadership. The adults in the story, the guardians of the gate, fell asleep while the walls were being breached. The final chapter of this chronicle is not a lamentation, but a manifesto for the great decoupling. It is the moment when the collective we decides that the health of a child's soul is worth more than the convenience of a silent toddler or the efficiency of a connected teen. This is the sensational return to reality, an alchemical process where we must turn the leaden addiction of the present back into the golden freedom of the past. Lies the ultimate meaning that the book intends to convey. The anxious generation is a warning that we have fundamentally broken the ecological niche of human development. Hyde's core message is a radical call for the restoration of the real. It posits that a human being is not a data point to be optimized by a machine, but a biological entity that requires physical play, face-to-face friction, and the sanctity of deep attention to become whole. The book serves as a psychological exorcism, driving out the demon of safetyism in the physical world and the demon of exploitation in the digital one. It teaches us that to save the next generation, we must have the courage to be Luddites of the spirit, not by hating technology, but by loving humanity more. We must restore the play-based childhood as a sacred rite of passage, ensuring that the next generation grows up with calloused hands and a quiet mind rather than numb thumbs and a screaming ego. The climax of this journey leads to a state of institutional courage. The school, the home, and the government must act as a trident of protection. We move from the anxious self to the sovereign community, where the standards of childhood are no longer dictated by the engineers in Silicon Valley, but by the parents on the playground. The sensational power of this transformation lies in the rebirth of agency. When a child puts down the phone and picks up a ball, a book, or a conversation, they are performing an act of existential rebellion. They are claiming their right to a life that is slow, deep, and difficult, the only kind of life that has ever been worth living. The final revelation is that we don't need to fix the kids, we need to fix the world we forced them to live in. We are the architects of the sanctuary, and it is time to start building. We must stop overprotecting children where they are safe and start protecting them where they are in danger.